Hi, everyone. I'm so happy you're here with us today. I am Brandon Adler, and I'm excited to be joined by author and leadership coach, Caitlin Drago. Welcome, Caitlin. We're super excited to have you here
Hello.
with us.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I know we're ready to get started. Before we do that, let's do some quick housekeeping information for the viewers, and then we'll learn a lot more about Caitlin. Really, the important thing to tell you is how to ask questions, and you can ask questions throughout the entirety of the presentation. So in order to do so, click that comments/questions button that's just below the live stream video to submit your questions at any time. Now, to properly introduce our guest. Caitlin is an LA-based actor turned Rochester, New York-based certified leadership coach and facilitator. Acting taught her to be present, self-aware, empathetic, and to prioritize connection with others. Improv taught her to listen and to deal with the unexpected in positive and creative ways. Paired with her training as a leadership coach, she works with leaders and teams across industries, improving communication, connection, and teamwork. She's been featured in Medium's Authority magazine and has spoken at various conferences, including the Talent Development Think Tank, the International TWA Conference, and Disrupt HR Rochester. Okay, Caitlin, I'm going to turn things over to you.
All right. Thank you so much. Hello again. My name is Caitlin. As Brendan mentioned, my pronouns are she, her. And yes, I am a certified leadership coach who started out as an actor. And I know that's an unconventional combination of credentials. So I'll share how that happened for just a couple of minutes. So I went to school for acting, and then I moved to Los Angeles, where the plan was to get cast in a sitcom that was filmed in front of a live studio audience. And then in the off season, I would be in movies and maybe some commercials, because that's how it works, right? That's not exactly what happened, but I did get to work on some really fun projects with some really amazing people. As you can see here, I did get to walk a red carpet once. You can see me there in the upper right breaking character during what was supposed to be a very serious comedic scene. Down in the lower right, that is me having the privilege of working with a mannequin for the duration of the day. And then in the middle there, you can see me really in my element, getting to do some improv. So LA was really where I got super into improv. I studied at Upright Citizens Brigade, which was the first nationally accredited improv school in the country. And now I take those theater and improv skills that I learned and use them with non actors, with professionals outside of the entertainment industry. Because when I moved back to the upstate New York area, I realized really quickly how helpful those skills were. They impact how I communicate, how I connect with others, how I work when I'm on a team, how I lead. And it doesn't mean that I am perfect all the time. You will find that out very quickly. It does mean that I have a different set of tools in my tool belt. And today I hope to share some of those tools with you. Now, I've thrown the word improv around quite a bit. So let's get into it and do a little improv 101 here. So, first of all, what is improv? Improv is an art form where everything is made up on the spot. Nothing is planned ahead of time. There is no script. Sometimes we are given a suggestion and then we just go from there. And when I walk into a room of non actors and let them know that we are going to be learning by doing improv, the typical reaction is, well, I can't do that. I could never. And if you're thinking that, I am delighted to share with you that you are incorrect. I'm pretty sure nobody gave you a script this morning or told you all of the things that were going to happen and the perfect way to respond in every single moment. More likely, you have been improvising all day long. You are dealing with whatever comes at you in the best way that you know how. So we are simply sharpening some tools that you already have. You might be wondering, well, isn't it just a free for all? I mean, people get a word and then they just go. And what I love about improv as somebody who enjoys structure and rules is that in order for those improvisers to put on a cohesive performance, they have agreed to abide by a specific set of rules and principles so that that performance can go smoothly. It's not much different from some of the rules that you might follow day to day. Maybe there's a rule within your team that if somebody emails you, you're supposed to email them back within 24 hours. Now, within that email, you have the creative freedom to say whatever you want, but there is structure within that freedom so that things can move forward and people have what they need to be successful. You might also be wondering, well, do I have to be funny for this to work? And the short answer is no. Whether you can tell a good joke or whether you are the person who's making other people laugh all the time is not going to dictate whether or not you'll be able to take what you learned today and put it into practice. And finally, will I have to perform? I mean, I know that this is a webinar and I don't think anyone can take me or, put me on camera or take me off of mute, but can you just confirm that for me? And the answer is yes. You are not going to have to perform. Yes, if you have questions, please put them in. Please submit those so I can answer some of those at the end. And I do want to thank Brandon and Fred ahead of time for being willing to come on in just a little bit to help me show how some of this works. But otherwise, you can sit back, relax, and just focus on learning the basics of improv and how to use them to be a better communicator. We'll look at some common things that we might not even be aware of that we're doing that are getting in the way of truly connecting with others. And we'll look at how to increase your empathy and therefore your understanding, especially when things get a little bit heated. Now, all of this together will hopefully give you some insight into healthy communication so that you can hear others and others can hear you. Now, you chose to be here today for an hour when there's lots of other things that you could be doing. And I'm wondering who you showed up for. Who is it that you are hoping to improve your communication with and your connection to? If it's an entire team, maybe pick one person and keep them in the forefront of your mind as we move through today's webinar. Ask yourself what resonates with you. What are you excited to try? What are you looking forward to trying? And what questions do you have, of course? I promised rules. Here we go. The first rule in improv is that we always say yes and. What that means is that whatever my partner throws out there as the idea of the moment, I'm going to actively listen to that. I'm going to say yes to it. And then I'm going to add on to their idea. It might look something like this. Hey, I love your red hat. Yes, you love my red hat, and I'm going to wear it to the pool party. Yes, you're going to wear it to the pool party, and I'm going to find one too so that we can be twins. Yes, you're going to find one too so that we can be twins, and it's going to be amazing. So that's how that works. It allows us to build something together from nothing. Now, let's take a look at what happens if we don't follow this yes and rule. Hey, I love your red hat. This hat isn't red. Actually, I'm not wearing a hat at all. And now I am uncomfortable, and you as an audience is uncomfortable. And so we agree to say yes to each other's ideas, to build on those ideas so that we can avoid some of that discomfort and put on a show that is pleasurable to sit through. The second big rule is that we are always looking to make each other look good. This means that when I go out on stage, I am not thinking, okay, what's the funny thing I'm going to say? Everyone's going to think I'm the most brilliant improviser here, and I will win improv. That's not what we're doing. What we're actually doing is looking for ways to set each other up for success, to set each other up for a laugh. It's a lot of pressure to go out on stage without a script and begin from nothing. In order to help each other feel safe, we agree that we're going to look out for another. We're going to look out for one another. We're going to look to make each other look good so that we can feel that safety and have more creative freedom, to feel free to throw out something that's a little outside of the box, knowing that somebody else is going to have my back and make it make sense. So the next time that you see an improv show, or if you watch the show Whose Line Is It Anyway, if you see the person that's getting all of the laughs, they're a good improviser. The person who is setting them up for those laughs is the truly great improviser. So these two rules together, this yes and making each other look good together, is going to be what I'm going to refer to as the improv approach. And I have yes and mindset here because as improvisers, we are following these rules to an absolute extreme. And often that's what makes the funny stuff happen. What I'm going to be asking you to do today is consider these concepts in their, most pure form, understanding that you will need to scale them back in a way that feels authentic to you and that makes sense to you. All right. Now let's see how this works with someone besides me in my one-woman show. We're going to play a game called One Word Story. And I'll share the instructions first, and then I'll ask my teammates, Brandon and Frederick, to come on camera with me. This is a game that you can play with your family, with your team, with your friends, and it's pretty simple. We are going to be telling a story, each contributing one word at a time. And the rules are that it is only one word. Punctuation may be used as our one word. So if we feel like it's the end of a sentence or a sentence just needs to end, we can say period or question mark, whatever we want. And then the next person will start off with the next sentence. And finally, no memorization is needed. We don't have to repeat back each word that was said. All right, I'm going to ask Brandon and Frederick to come on camera with me and take the slide down so we can see your lovely faces. All right, so the first thing that we need is a title of our story. And this can be more than one word. So what is the title of a story that has never been told before, but we're going to tell it today? Either of you.
The Strange Case of the Red Ball.
The Strange Case of the Red Bull or Ball?
Ball.
Ball. Okay. So let's go right in alphabetical order. Brandon, I'll have you start, and then it'll go me, and then Frederick, and we'll go around like that. So Brandon, you can start us off with one word.
Bounce.
Around.
The
Yard.
And
it
Flies.
away.
quickly.
And far. I already messed up.
It's okay.
Far.
Period.
Can
We.
Go.
to
The.
Moon.
without
Candy.
Question mark.
yes.
Can.
We.
Exclamation point.
All right, and I'll let you off the hook there. So before you go, can I ask you a couple of really quick questions?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. What did you notice just doing that exercise? What was your experience like?
So it definitely seems to create connections because you're trying to think like, you have ideas where you want to go, but it might not necessarily work where you are. And so you have to kind of vibe with the other people in the group to be able to figure out, okay, this is where I thought it was going to go, but it's actually going someplace totally different. And how can I work together to figure that out?
Exactly. Yeah. And we have to be willing to let go of our great idea in that moment to serve the team.
It makes you feel safer already with the team that you're working with because you're laughing and just casually working together. So it makes you kind of trust where everything's going, because you have to lean on one another. So
Exactly. Awesome. Yeah. No one's in charge
right.
in this scene. We all get to contribute in an equal way. Awesome. Well, thank you both so much. I'll let you take a break. We'll bring the slides back up, please. Wonderful. What I love about this game is that it allows us to explore some of our natural tendencies. How do we communicate, and what can get in the way sometimes? And what do we need to be able to create something from nothing and build that trust? So let's take a look at some of the other things that we uncovered in One Word Story. So, Frederick mentioned it, this idea that we want to plan ahead, maybe sometimes instead of listening. Fun fact, we can process about 400 to 800 words per minute, but we only speak at about 120. So that means our brain has time to plan, to think about, oh, I know how this is supposed to go, and then try to push our idea through. We want it to be done our way. Or maybe we are just, thinking about what we're going to have for dinner that night instead of being present and in that moment. When someone is taking that time to come up with a word, we might be feeling like, well, it's so obvious. They should just say this thing. I know what the word is supposed to be. I know what's supposed to happen. And I wonder how many of you, even once we said the title of the story, already had an idea of how the story was supposed to go in your mind. It may have been frustrated in that moment that it wasn't going in the way that you had assumed it might. And I wonder how this might show up in normal conversation. How often are we assuming that we know how a conversation is going to go, whether ahead of it or in the middle of it, and really stuck in that story instead of being present and listening to the last thing that that person has said and adding on to it? Sometimes we might think, oh, well, it's up to me and me only. I need to be the one to add on the fun word. I need to take this all on myself to make it great. When maybe it's the or the or the and that's needed in that moment. And when we put all that pressure on ourselves to contribute something that we see as fantastic, we sometimes miss out on the opportunity for collaboration and leaning on the skills and talents of others. And that's where we get to make each other look good. Because there were three of us, because we agreed to let go of our own ideas, we agreed to say yes and add on to what our teammates threw out there. We agreed to make each other look good, to try to set each other up for success and not just throw some word out that's going to trip somebody else up. It allowed us to come up with something that we likely wouldn't have come up with on our own if I had just said, all right, we're each going to write our own story. Let's see what happens. It all comes down to the fact that you can't add on to something that you didn't hear. So where do we start? We start with listening. If we commit to adding on to the last thing that was said, we are forced to listen to the last thing that was said. If you want to challenge yourself, take this, do it with a group of 5, 10 people, go in a circle, or if you're virtual like we are, we just went in alphabetical order. With the three of us, there wasn't a whole ton of time to plan. But if you've got a group, which means you have 5, 10, 30 seconds to for your mind to wander, make assumptions, get frustrated about the direction that the story is going, it can be a fun challenge to stay present and listen. This is going to help you work that listening muscle and give you and your team some additional self-awareness about your own natural tendencies. In One Word Story, we were quite literally forced to do this because the rule is one word. In regular conversation, though, it takes intention. The next conversation that you have, I invite you to challenge yourself to add on to what the other person said. Well, I'm already doing that, Caitlin. It's called a conversation. Are you, though? Or are you adding on in a way that will steer the conversation in a direction towards what you want to talk about? Or are you making assumptions about what you think the other person is going to say? Or were you thinking about, again, what you're having for dinner tonight? If you try this, you might find yourself being more present, letting the other person finish their full thought, more deeply considering what they have to say, and allowing yourself to have a truly collaborative conversation where you're both contributing in a more balanced way. Take a moment and think about what this might look like with that person that you brought to mind. What impact might this have on your connection to them? When I was doing my coach training, I thought that if I could finish somebody's sentence, that meant that I'm just so in tune with this person. When in actuality, it was just poor listening. For me, I had to sit on my hands as a physical reminder to let that person finish their entire thought and maybe even give them a little space after they've finished that thought, because maybe they're not done. If you want to take it a step further, you can practice active listening, where you reflect back the last thing that was said or your understanding of it. And in my one woman show earlier, I did just this. Hey, I love your red hat. Yes, reflecting back, you love my red hat, and I'm going to wear it to the pool party. Yes, you're going to wear it to the pool party, and I'm going to find one so that we can be twins. This, again, is what allows us to build something from nothing. When we bring this into normal conversation, it does a couple of things. First and foremost, it lets the other person know that they've been heard. I promised we'd talk about sticky situations, so let's get into it. Think about the last time that you were really stressed out and you chose to talk to somebody about it. Who was it? And why did you choose them? How did they respond? How did the way that they listened or didn't listen make you feel? Maybe it was one of those situations where you weren't ready to discuss a solution and you just wanted someone else to understand what you were going through. You just wanted to know that you were heard. Perhaps you chose them because you knew that they would listen. And finally, how did you know that they were listening? When we reflect back what we've heard, we let the other person know without a doubt that we are paying attention to what they're saying because we can repeat it back to them. And along with simply letting them know that they've been heard, that you're focused on them, that you care about what they're saying, that you care enough to confirm that you heard it correctly, this simple act can also play a part in helping them to get to a place where they are less stressed out and can think more clearly and creatively themselves. Let's see how this might play out in a tricky situation, going with our typical reaction instead of the active listening. So to be clear, this is what not to do. In this situation, we're going to have D. D is a direct report, and the compensation packages for the year have just come out. And D is going to their manager, Mo, to share their feelings on the matter. I have worked so hard this past quarter, and this compensation package does not reflect my effort. Okay, let's look at your performance review and see where you might improve further. How do you think that response is going to be received by D? Maybe not great. D is likely not ready. Even though Mo has offered a decent solution, it will likely be perceived by D more like criticism than collaboration. Because when we are feeling stressed or frustrated or anxious, our brain is likely in some version of fight, flight, freeze, fawn mode. And when our brains are in this state, we are more focused on survival, on identifying and avoiding potential threats, where anything that is said might be perceived as such. It's hard to take in new information, And that means we're not really in creative problem solving mode or able to learn in that moment. Let's try this again. And this time, Mo is not going to jump to problem solving. They're just going to use this yes and tool. They're going to say yes, reflect back, and add on. I've worked so hard this past quarter, and this compensation package does not reflect my effort. Yes, you feel that you gave it your all and you don't agree with this compensation package. And I understand your frustration. And maybe they go on. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I have grown so much and shown my value, and it's really deflating to see that this is how I'm rewarded. Yes, you feel deflated because you've grown so much in the last few months. And I'd like to understand more about your perspective on your growth and success. Okay, well, I was on the project management team for the launch of our latest product, and already it's surpassing our previous number one seller. I've been working with a mentor on the R&D team, and I completed the training course that you led. Yes, you have contributed to our company's growth. You've taken time to focus on your own development, and I can see how you could be disappointed by this package. Now, how do you think D feels? Maybe a touch calmer? Perhaps their defenses are coming down. Maybe they can take a breath. So what's in it for D? Reflecting back lets D know that they've been understood. It allows them to feel safe, that they have someone on their side, or at least someone who is curious about the situation. And when they feel safe, their bodies and brains can come out of fight or flight and switch over to creative and strategic thinking, where they're also open to learning as well. And what's in it for Mo? Now, Mo has someone who can think more clearly and objectively, and who will have that capacity to listen to what they might have to say with more objectivity and curiosity. Mo also has better information because they stayed curious instead of getting defensive themselves. Now is the time for Mo to maybe bring forth the suggestion that they look at the performance review. Or maybe now that they have more information, they have a better suggestion because they understand D and their situation. Like, hey, let's quantify this. Let's bring this to HR. Let's bring this to finance. Either way, Mo is better off because D can hear them, and D can now hear any suggestions or further conversation as support. When we actively listen to each other, we're not only able to take in the words that someone's saying, we're clarifying, we're getting ahead of unnecessary misunderstanding. We're also able to take in their body language, their emotion, what they're not saying. You're getting a better understanding of them, their situation, what they're feeling, which allows us to be better at empathizing with them. An article in Forbes from 2021 shared that when people reported that their leaders were empathetic, they were more likely to report that they were able to be innovative. 61% compared to 13% of employees with less empathetic leaders. There is so much to be gained, so much creativity that we can get out of other people when we slow down, take in that whole person, stay curious about them and their experience and their situation. All you have to do, and I say this with a big old footnote of it's easier said than done, is to be present, listen, and let them know that they've been heard. Before we move on, think about your person again. When was the last tough conversation that you had to have with them? How did it go? And how might it have gone differently if you took this approach? A couple of notes on this. This does not mean that you must go around starting every situation with yes, and then reflecting back single thing that you hear, and then adding on. After a while, that might start to sound a little odd or disingenuous. Try it out. See what feels authentic to you. It's a tool. Use it when it serves the situation. Use it when maybe you need a moment to collect your own thoughts before responding. Also, yes does not have to mean I agree, especially in this case. Notice Mo didn't say, yes, you did give it your all, and it is unfair, and let's march up to finance and demand a raise. It can mean, yes, I'm here with you. Yes, I hear you. It also doesn't mean that you are expected to sit and listen to language that is harmful, demeaning, or disrespectful. You are absolutely allowed and encouraged to set appropriate boundaries when necessary. Once you've listened, you've clarified, and you've got your thought partner ready to collaborate with you, what is the next mistake that we sometimes run into? I'll give you a hint. You saw it in the beginning when I showed what happens when we don't follow the yes and rule. So let's take a look. Dee's ready to collaborate. Dee's ready to come up with a solution. Maybe it's a little outside of the box, and maybe it's something that hasn't been done before. Let's see what happens. I think that raises should be given every 3 months instead of once a year. No, that's not going to work because what do you think this next communication misstep is? Looking for what can't work. And this whole happens almost unconsciously due to our own negativity bias. We are much more likely to see first the negative in a situation rather than the positives. So what do? Instead of looking for what can't work, as improvisers, we look for what can work. The improv approach requires that we look for what can work versus what can't work. Again, that's what helps us in those scenes to move forward. And it's challenging because it's not our default. If someone approaches you with an idea that is outside of the box, it's unconventional, it's going to create a challenge, or, we've always done things this way, or maybe we tried that before and then we know it doesn't work. Our default response is, that's not going to work, and let me tell you all the reasons why. That's the easy response. To make a choice to look for what can work takes intention and practice. And here's the trick. You don't have to say yes to the whole idea. Again, we're looking for what in that idea can work. What piece can you agree with? I was waiting outside for the bus with my son. I think he was in first or second grade at the time. It was spring. We had just planted our garden in the yard, and we live on a pretty busy road, and there's not a sidewalk. And he said to me, Mom, you know what I think we should do? We should put a garden up here by the road so that if somebody needs food, they can stop and get what they need for them or their family. And I hate to say that my inside reaction was, we can't do that. Someone's going to get hurt. I took a moment. I remembered my own improv approach and said, yes, you want to put a garden up here so that our neighbors can get the food that they need. And what I like about that idea is that you are looking to care for our community. And maybe what we can do is take some of the food that we grow in our garden in the safe part of the yard and bring it to one of the food cupboards in town where there is plenty of parking and sidewalks so that people can access that safely. I didn't have to say yes to the whole idea, and I also didn't have to squash his idea right away. Now, what do you think that did for our relationship? Now my son knows that he can come to me with his ideas, his great ideas and his terrible ideas. And I'm not going to immediately shoot them down or discount them. I'm going to at least listen to them and consider them. And maybe I'll even run the thought experiment from time to time with him and look for ways that we can come up with something together, again, that we might not have come up with on our own. It's going to build trust in that relationship. And maybe the biggest benefit is that he's going to be more likely to come to me when there is a problem because he knows that I'm going to listen, that I'm going to try to find a solution with him instead of, again, squashing it, saying no, and reacting in a way that's not productive in that moment. If you think about how this might translate to the workplace, everyone has had that boss or that manager or that teammate who is the no person. And when we hear no enough times, what do? We stop. We stop going to them with our ideas. And if there is a problem, that's not the person that I'm going to right away. Or maybe I'm going to wait until it's further down the line when there's less that can be done because I'm waiting until the last moment because I don't want to deal with what that reaction is going to be. So can you be the person, again, it doesn't have to be the person who says yes to everything. It can be that you are the person that people know that you're going to listen to them and consider their idea and maybe have that thought experiment or run the thought experiment, and that they can trust you and come to you with their wonderful ideas and with their terrible ideas. Let's get back to Dee and Mo and see how this could go. So Dee says, I think raises should be given every 3 months instead of once a year. Yes, you think that raises should be given every 3 months instead of once a year. And I think there's something to providing incentive for growth in the short term instead of waiting until the end of the year. So maybe we could talk to finance about what quarterly bonuses might look like. And the benefit here too is that now you've got buy-in. It wasn't just, hey, this is what we're going to do and that's that. You start to build solutions together so that everyone is more likely to follow through. Now, this doesn't mean that everything has to be everyone's decision. It is also very healthy to have one person who at the end of the day is the person that says, okay, we have these ideas and this is what we're going with. And at the same time, I encourage you to look for places where there is opportunity for collaboration. So this was an example of a difficult conversation that turned into a collaborative one. Difficult conversations are necessary. They are important. They're not bad. Can we look for ways to make them more collaborative? Now, having tough conversations is an entire chapter in my book. A good portion of the book actually covers a whole slew of applications of the improv approach, really taking topics that you probably have a base understanding of, like giving and receiving feedback or communicating through change, and looking at how you can make those interactions even more effective. Now, there's more that I want to share with you, and I do still want to underline this when it comes to tricky conversations. Often when I hold people to the strict rules of the improv approach when we're practicing this, because they are listening, because they are responding to the last thing that was said instead of being preoccupied or formulating their own argument, looking for what they can agree with, when they are focused on supporting one another, often they completely skip over the finger pointing portion of whose fault is it that we're in this predicament. And perhaps after some clarification, they get right to problem solving. This isn't to say that later on they shouldn't go back and figure out the cause of the issue in a productive way. But when a solution is the priority, they can get to it a lot faster, leveraging the knowledge that both of them bring to the table using this improv approach. All right, we've come to it. Let's talk about it. The B word. You all know it, but the first thing that I notice when I invite folks with this yes and phrase is how often they default to yes, but even when a fantastic facilitator has given them very clear instructions to say yes and. Honestly, I love when this happens because it helps me to prove the point. But has a very similar feel to it as no. It negates anything that was said before, no matter how positive, productive, or true it was. I invite you to close your eyes for a moment if you feel safe doing so. I'm not going to put the text up because I want you to pay attention to how this feels in your body. Imagine that you are a new sales associate and you just led your first presentation with a client. You go to your supervisor for a debrief. Pay attention to how you feel hearing this really simple exchange. I'm really proud of how my presentation with the client went yesterday, and I would really like some more opportunities to do this. Yes, you did a fantastic job with our client yesterday and you'd like more opportunities, but I want to help you with your slides next time. How do you feel? Do you feel heard? Which part of that response will bounce around in your head for the rest of the day? Was it the "you did a fantastic job" part or the "but I want to help you with your slides next time"? What type of emotional energy are you going to bring into your next conversation? And how confident or willing might you be to lead this type of meeting in the future? What is the trust level in this relationship as a result of this simple exchange? Now, let's see what happens when we make a simple substitution by subbing in "and" for "but." I'm really proud of how my presentation with the new client went yesterday, and I would love more opportunities to do so in the future. Yes, you did a fantastic job, and you'd like more opportunities to do so, and I want to help you with your slides next time. Now, how do you feel? Do you feel the same? Do you feel different? Maybe you feel more supported instead of criticized. Maybe you're looking forward to the next opportunity, knowing that someone is looking out for you. What's our level of trust now? We changed one word. Our supervisor didn't say, "Yeah, you have free reign on any and all client meetings now." That area of opportunity was still expressed, and it was done in a way that potentially improved the relationship, allowed us to hear and retain the appreciation and praise, as well as the constructive feedback and support that was offered. And likely it left us feeling more confident in our own skills and more willing to try something new in the future, knowing that it does not have to be perfect right off the bat. This all plays into the principle that we make each other look good. And I'd like to take our last few minutes to underline this concept. In order to truly be able to make each other look good, we need to know what the skills and sometimes hidden talents are of people, what other people need help with, and how we can leverage both of them. I'll share a story of how I've seen this play out. I was working with an organization once, and this team within the larger organization, there was a bit of confusion about what exactly they did. And so they put together this beautiful computer animated video to illustrate their function, what they did within the company. And they, put on some stock music to it and were ready to send it out when one of the teammates, his name was John, came up to the leader, Andy, and said, "Hey, you know what? I actually went to school for music composition. Could I compose something for this?" And Andy said, "Well, absolutely, have at it." And they were kind enough to share the finished product with me. And you know the difference that a good score can make to a movie or even a commercial. And it was the music that made this video. It made you have an emotional reaction. And it was because Andy had created this culture where folks could come to him and say, "Hey, this is kind of outside of maybe what I normally do day to day, but I would love to have the chance to use this talent or this passion that I have." And when Andy said yes, it took a project that was like good to something that was truly just beautiful. Oh, it was a work of art. And the wonderful thing about this is that everyone wins. You don't have to do everything yourself. By looking for ways to make others look good, you're taking some of the pressure off of yourself and giving them opportunities to do things that bring them joy and that allow them to learn and grow. I had hidden talents on the graphic because not everyone walks around just saying, "Hey, this is my hidden talent." Sometimes it's going to take a bit of curiosity. You might have to ask, what lights you up? What would you like to try your hand at? What is your hidden talent? And again, you make that choice to look for what can work. Look for ways that you can use this person who has revealed a little bit about who they are and what makes them shine. At the same time, you're tending to that relationship. You are further building trust by communicating that I am curious about you as a person. I'm looking out for you. I want to see you succeed. I know that you are a talented human, and I want to see you joyfully put those talents to use. Again, think about your person. How might you look for a way to set them up for success? How might you make them look good? Because we know that in the end, when we strive to make each other look good, we all end up looking great. Today we focused on, there we go. Today we focused on learning the basic principles of improv, that we say yes and we make each other look good. We looked at those common communication missteps. We look at how we can increase our empathy by being more present and by taking in that whole person, and how to use these all to improve communication overall. And now it's your turn to say yes and, to reflect back on what you've heard. What tools can you use? And right now, I want you to decide how you'll apply them in the next 24 hours. You don't have to do everything at once. Just pick one thing that you want to try. And if it's helpful, you can look right at this list and pick one of these. Do you want to try being more present? Do you want to try just letting other people finish their full thought? Do you want to look for ways to have more collaborative conversations? Are you going to make that choice to look for what can work versus what can't work? And can you sub out but and put in and? It's funny, when we hear the word communication, we think about what we'll say and how we'll look. When in actuality, what's required of us is an intentional focus on the other person, listening, being present with them, looking for what we can build on, and supporting them. In a way, it ends up allowing us to disconnect a little bit from our ego, to be a little less self-conscious and be better communicators and connectors ourselves. Now, before we go into the Q&A, I would love to ask for your feedback on your experience today. And as a thank you, you will get a free preview of my book. On the slide here, you can either use the QR code that will send you to my link tree, or you can plug in that link right there. When you get to Linktree, the very top, there will be an opportunity there to share your feedback. And the first question will ask you for your code, and your code will be alumni. This lets me know that it was someone who was here instead of someone who just happened to stumble on my Linktree. Thank you all again for your willingness to learn and to hopefully trying something new in the next 24 hours. And I'm ready for Q&A.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that excellent presentation.
Thank you.
Let's start with George's question. George says, so I buy into this. Great. How do I help get my coworkers and managers to buy in?
Thank you for this question. Yes, because they're not in the room. And the thing about this is that not everyone that you communicate with will never be in the same room. And I hope that this doesn't sound like a cop-out. The best thing that you can do is lead by example and lead by shifting your own behavior. And once you do that, when people start to see, oh, they're saying yes, they're adding on, this yes and phrase is something that can so easily be brought in to regular conversation. The other thing that you can do is, if you have the ability, if you have the decision-making power within your team, you can offer this as a rule for a standing meeting. And there can be a time frame to it too. It can be, hey, you know what? For the next 5 minutes, can we all agree to say yes and share this concept with them? Usually with a time frame, folks are a little bit more open to trying something new. Bring in the one-word story and have that be, frame it as a warm-up to get them to try it. And then ask some of those questions of, oh, what are we noticing about how we tend to communicate here? I hope that's helpful.
Very helpful. Thank you. Natasha is asking, can you list an example of making others look good? How do you start the conversation?
So the idea is understanding what other people are good at and looking for ways to allow them to use those skills and talents. It starts with, and it can be an awkward conversation because people don't always like to talk about themselves. And so there's kind of two ways that you can go at it. You can go at it by asking them flat out, what are you interested in doing? What is something that you see somebody else doing that you would like to try? What is a skill that you're not using here that you would like to use? And then the other piece of it is that you can ask yourself some questions. What can I let go of? What am I holding on to that might be a great opportunity for somebody else to have a go at? I'll give it kind of a silly a silly example. There's this group Disrupt HR that I've spoken at, and I've volunteered for them in the past couple of years as well. And I have a background in theater. And so I have, in the last couple of years, stationed myself as the person backstage who helps everyone get their mic packs on, because I have this special skill where I can make sure that it's on, that people are heard, that their cords aren't showing. And so they can look really amazing when they go out there. So I'm making them look good. They're also getting to make me look good because I get to use this fun skill that makes me feel really good and really valuable.
Thank you. Mara is asking, how do you keep from expending too much emotional energy on someone who's constantly negative? You do everything to help everyone look good, but they still make the team look bad.
Oh, that is a good question. So it is a collective effort, right? It works best when everyone is trying. And sometimes when you have the person who is the one who's always negative, the one who is always playing devil's advocate, often they, just like everyone else, just want to know that they have been heard. Sometimes it's a matter of giving them that airspace. Let them know, yep, okay, we hear you. We hear that's what you said. And this is the direction that we're going to go in. And again, it's a frustrating answer. And it still stays as it starts with you modeling. And if you can get other people on board with using this approach, it's going to be that much easier. And hopefully at a certain point, that person, selectively moves from the team, or a leader notices the impact that negativity is having and lets that person go.
In the same vein, Dan is saying, isn't it important to have at least one person at the table who looks for what can't be done? If everyone is looking at something for what can be done, it leaves the team open to being blindsided by the can't after they've devoted a lot of time to a potentially untenable project.
Absolutely. Yeah. So this is part of the creative problem solving process. If you've ever looked into that, we have this time where we are expanding ideas, we're brainstorming, we're looking at all of the possibilities, then maybe we narrow it down to the best ideas. And then we do take a time to take a hatchet at it and point out all of the things that are wrong with this. There's absolutely time for that. And then once we see what's wrong, we can look for solutions to that problem. So yes, you're absolutely right. It is a part in the process. What I would like to challenge everyone to is to give the collaborative part, the part where we're looking for what can work, a little bit more breath and a little more space than maybe you're used to, because our default tends to be to go straight to the pieces of it that aren't going to work.
Wonderful. We've had a couple of people asking about kind of using the approach outside of work. And Carol says, how do we go about connecting with a close group of friends using the improv approach? A close group meaning there are one or two leaders in the team. And Erica also said, I would love your thoughts on how I can share some of these tools and best practices with my adult children as gently as possible.
Again, it's modeling. Starts with that modeling. You can play one word story if you can. I mean, depending on what age they are, they might be too cool for a one word story. But again, it starts with that modeling. It starts by letting them know that you can come to them and challenging them in that moment of, hey, I just heard you say, but what happens if we switch that to an and? Or you can prompt them by asking, all right, we're at a disagreement here. Is there anything that you see that you can agree with in what I'm saying or in the solution that we're coming up with? I know it's modeling, it's modeling, it's modeling.
Lucy is asking, do you recommend taking true improv classes to help cement this approach, even if one does not have an interest in acting itself?
Absolutely. Yes. If you have local improv classes that you can go to, 100%. They are skills that are going to serve you in so many places, and then there's also, I'm not the only facilitator out there who uses improv for team building and communication training. So, find a facilitator if that is more, if you want to do something with your team and something that's going to be a little bit more tailored to the challenges that you and your team might be facing. And yes, go take an improv class.
Just because it sounds fun.
Mhm.
Mark is saying, is there a time limit within a conversation period with a manager or a coworker, leaving him or her to think about the question of resolution?
I'm not sure I understand that fully.
I guess maybe you have your conversation and then you let them ruminate on it. Is there a time limit within the conversation period with a manager or a coworker?
Oh, yes, because not everybody processes
Right.
by talking to each other. Sometimes you do need to step away and think it through and process internally. I don't think that there is a set time limit. And at the same time, even I think about giving and receiving feedback, where if you wait too long, it's not going to be as relevant, or there might be disconnect between what actually happened and what needs to happen. And so I would say, yes, if it's someone who needs a little bit of time, give them what they need. That's part of making them look good, understanding how they learn, how they work, how they think. And maybe setting a time with them before you let them go to say, okay, we are going to connect back on this at this date, so that it's not just kind of left open.
Great. We did have a couple of people wondering about feeling, I guess, inauthentic in using the approach and worrying that they themselves would just feel placated.
If someone was saying, yes, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that's fair. I totally understand that. And again, it's a matter of scaling it back in a way that makes sense for you. And so if it's less of yes and repeating the exact thing that was said, maybe you don't repeat back every time. What I like about reflective listening or active listening is that, again, it forces you to make sure that you're listening to what the other person is saying, because you are challenging yourself to repeat it. If you can instead really, really focus on adding on to the last thing that was said without necessarily repeating it, if that feels more authentic to you, that's okay too. As long as you are making sure that you're doing those other things of letting them completely finish their thought, looking for what can work, and trying to add on to what they have said, even if you're not repeating it back and then adding on.
Mm-hmm. I think we've got time for one more question. Bob is saying, what if someone really screwed up? I'm worried yes and would not get the point across that they screwed it up bad and they need to learn quickly. How can I make them understand the seriousness of a situation using this method?
So, yes, when you're reflecting back, you can reflect the facts of the situation. If someone comes and says, I sent an email to the wrong client with somebody else's contract. Yes, you sent the wrong email to a different client with somebody else's contract, and these are the ramifications that is going to have. And how might we move forward from here? You can use it as an opportunity to state the facts. And by reflecting back, you're taking a little bit out of the emotion out of it for yourself and just stating, this is the situation. And hopefully they can take that in and realize, oh, yes. And if it's a situation where now you need a solution, you can move forward, hopefully, from that. Or you can ask them, what do you think the ramifications of this are going to be? We don't have to completely, rub someone's nose in it for them to understand before we can move on to coming up with a solution together.
Great. I lied. I have one more question. Nicole
Okay.
asked if we could look forward to the book being on Audible or something like that sometime soon.
I would love to get the book on Audible. Yes. Luckily my husband owns a recording studio. So once I have some space, I would love to be able to narrate my own book. Yeah. I'm hoping within the next year or so that I can get that up.
Excellent. Thank you, Caitlin. Thank you so much. I know that we all learned a ton, and I definitely want to do the one-word story again. That was fun, if I can keep it to one word. And thank you, everybody, for attending the talk today, and I hope that everybody has a great